Hi, Elaine here. Today I'll share the wonders of text wrapping in Affinity Publisher, including a couple of neat tricks. Unless your document contains nothing but text, wrapping is going to be important. Be it flyers, reports, or magazines, you're going to need to know how to control the placement of your text. In this video, you'll learn the basics of text wrapping, what the text wrap outline is and how to edit it, how to reset that text wrap outline, that wrapping goes beyond just images, how to elegantly deal with background images, and a couple of bonuses. 1. You'll learn how to create consistency by making a specific wrap setting a default. And 2. You'll learn how pinning plays nicely with text wrap. Let's get going. We've got a lot to cover. But first, a warning. The number one mistake I see is applying the wrapping to the text frame. No, you apply the wrap to the element to have the text wrapped around it, rather than the text frame. Now this especially makes sense when you might want to move the wrapped element to another location, but keep the wrapping intact. More on that later. This is the file we'll be working with. It's 2 pages and text only at the moment. First thing I'm going to do is insert a picture frame. We'll have this as a circle and just draw it on the right hand side there. If you don't see that when you've drawn it, it could be that you have preview toggled on, because that's what it looks like if you do toggle preview on. One thing I always do is make sure when I create something like this, I add a colour to it. I'm just going to add a yellow colour to that, and now, even with preview enabled, I can still see that frame, although there is nothing in it at the moment. It doesn't need to contain any content for the wrap to work, so let's have a look at the options. I already have the text wrap panel open, but if you do not, you will find it in the top toolbar. There are 3 buttons that we will be working with in this video, and the first one is the Show Text Wrap Settings. So with it selected, you have a range of options here. Now the default is none, and that is what is applied here. Be aware you can't change the default, but I do have a way to work around that limitation to share with you later. So let's go through the options. First of all, you have jump, and what that does is push the text out of the way completely on both the right and left of wherever this shape is. So if I move that to the middle, you can see even though there's plenty of space for text on the left and right, there isn't any. That's because we've selected jump. We then go to square, you will get a square around it and the text will push away from that. Tight is similar, but instead of it being a square shape, it will adhere to whatever shape the actual object is. Now we've got a couple more options, but before we look at those, be aware here that how the text actually wraps around this is going to depend on more than just the text wrap. So on the right hand side here, you can see that the text is very close to the circle. In fact, it's using the 3mm distance from text settings at the bottom. If I increase those, you can see it moves the text further away. But on the left-hand side of that, it's not quite as close to the circle. And that is because this text is left aligned. But if I were to go in and change the text, so it has a text style in here, I do believe it's body, and go into the body style. Opening up base, and there is body. Right-clicking on that and choosing to edit the body. The change I'm going to make here is to the paragraph settings. It's the alignment option. So there are lots of options in here, but what I want is to justify the text, but with the last line aligned to the left. And you can see what happens in here when I do that is it evens the text up a lot in terms of how close it is on the right and the left of the shape. So just something to be aware of if that is the look that you are aiming for. All right, let's get back to our document and have a look at those other 2 options. I'm going to edit that text style so we don't have anything unexpected happen later. And let's get back into here and have a look at the 2 options we've yet to see, which is inside and edge. Now I have better examples to use than this one, but I will show you what it looks like with this circle we have, which is if you say inside, it looks like it's done nothing, but trust me on this, it has. Taking the colour away, you can actually see it pushes the text inside that shape. The other option you have is edge. That has text inside the picture frame and surrounding it. You might be wondering what on earth. A better example is needed for this. So let's delete that shape that we have. And I have a much better example, which is my neon butterfly. So let's bring him on and go back so we can see the pages. Right, if I apply inside to that, that makes much more sense. You can actually see as I'm moving this, the text is inside there. Now the distance from the text is meaning that we can't quite read it at the edge. So if we put a distance from text in it, instead of it pushing the text away, it actually gives it more space inside the shape. So 3mm would probably work well with that. And I'm sure there's circumstances when that would be appropriate. Now the other one, edge, suits this image particularly, which is if you can imagine that you've put this on your page and you want the text to flow around it and through it. That's what edge does. The text then avoids the edge of the image, and as long as that's placed in a reasonable position, it may look all right. It isn't something that I do myself, I don't think, but it's an option. It's there. So going back to something a little easier to work with, a circle. Let's put that on, and we will put an image in it as well and apply the tight text wrap to it. And you can see that that is pushing that text away. If I move this, you can see the text is flowing with it. What I'm going to do is to make that a little bit smaller and show you some other options here. So you have the ability to wrap the text to both sides, which is how it's set at the moment, or you could make the text flow only around the largest side, which in this case is on the left-hand side. However, if you move that, as soon as the right-hand side is bigger, the text flips to that. Be aware that it is within a column of text and not across columns. So if I were to make that a little bit bigger and move it into the middle, you may think, well, that's not wrapping around the largest side. And indeed it's not. And that's because it's going across columns. But put it in its own column and it will wrap to the largest side. One final thing to be aware of in the text wrap dialog is if you choose to have Affinity Publisher in light mode. Mine's in the default dark mode, but as you can see there as you're looking at it, the lock icon on the distance from text is very, very clear. In light mode, you can barely see it. It does, however, function exactly the same. And once it's enabled, you can see it a little bit better. Just something to be aware of. Now, sticking with our butterfly here, let's move on and show you the text wrap outline. So moving that, we'll have it here, I think. The second option you have from these three buttons on the toolbar is Edit Wrap Outline. And what it is going to do is enable you to customize the outline for the text wrap. Now, with it being a circle, there are 4 points on there already. You can move these if you want. So if we took that right across, you wouldn't see that. It's not an outline that is visible, but the text wrap will observe it. So you could make all kinds of changes on here. In addition to stretching out the points you already have on there or tweaking them, so tweak it and you can see the text in real time moving away. You can also add new points, completely new points. As I hover over the edge of that, you can see I have the ability to add another point. And to do that, just click. Then you can pull that away. You can also change the node type. Up here we have 3 options. You have sharp, you have smooth, and you have smart. So if we made that one sharp, it would then have a sharp edge on it, which is great for a circle like this if what you want is to make one side of it square. So click on there, click the sharp option again, and I've got it square on one side. If I now bring this back in, I have it circular on one side and square on the other. If you change your mind, there is the third button available from the toolbar, which is only available when you have edited your text wrap outline, and that resets it. Let's see that again, but with a more obvious example. Oh, an action replay no less. Now here there's a sunflower in a circular picture frame with a custom text wrap outline. Let's take a look at that custom outline. Resetting that outline and all the text moves back to be much closer than with the custom text wrap outline. So far, so good, but it gets more complicated. And let's work with something completely different, which is I have another image. I actually have it available from the Assets panel. I will put this on page 2. So navigate to page 2, over to the Assets panel, and it's my caterpillar image here. Now, first thing to note with this, it does have some transparency on it, and that's so it blends nicely with the background. First thing I'm going to do is put it behind the text. And you see the problem. While it does have transparency at the top, it doesn't have transparency at the bottom, and nor do we want any. What we really need is the text to avoid where the caterpillar is in the background. Now, you may be tempted to make the text do some of the work here. This is not the right way to do it, but bear with me. I see so many people do it this way, which would be to change my columns from 2 to 1, to scoot this down so I have one column of text on the left, and then take this up. Then we know that we can edit the wrap points. To finish this off, you obviously need more text placeholders. And you could do that by adding them in yourself, by drawing them. So I'm using the pen tool to put a block at the bottom. At this point, it's not a text block, but it will be shortly. And put another block on the right-hand side here. And you can see the shapes that I'm making here. I'm working around the caterpillar. And finally, one at the bottom. Now, as I say, these are not text frames at the moment, but they could easily become text frames. So clicking on the edge of the text frame, right-clicking, and in your right-click menu, you have an option to convert to text frame. And all you would need to do is do that with all of them. So again, a right-click, convert to text frame, and finally, the last one at the bottom. And now all 3 of them are text frames. To get the text into them, you need to go back to the first text frame, click the triangle, and then feed the text into each shape, like that. Why is that not the right way to do it? That is absolutely not the right way to do it, and here's why. At the moment, it looks absolutely fine, but if you want to move the caterpillar, you would need to reconfigure the shapes that are holding your text. And for each time you may need to tweak where the image is, it's going to take you a couple of minutes to do that. That gets old fast. That's why that's not the right way to do it. So I'm going to undo, which is going to get rid of all of that. And now we're back where we were. Just because this image is in the background doesn't mean that you couldn't use the technique that we've already seen to make it work. So what I'm going to do is turn off the text so we can concentrate on the caterpillar. Using the middle option, which is the Edit Text Wrap Outline, and we have 4 points with it being a rectangular image. These can be moved. So let's move it much closer. And that's about right at the top, but we are going to need here to add some extra points and then move them in. So I've added an extra point there, and I would need an extra point here to get round the head, and then that point could be moved down. And I can finesse this, so I could pull that in a little bit, move it away from the head there. I could take this down and I could add extra points. But let's go for something that is reasonable, but it's quick. So take that up to there, add an extra point here and pull that up, and add an extra point just under the branch and pull that up. You can convert these to the other shapes, so there's a smooth one, and that way I can smooth that around the branch at the bottom. Now at that point, what I've actually done is edited the text wrap outline. So when we turn the text back on, you can see exactly what happens with that. And of course, the benefit of this is, as I mentioned at the very start, it moves with it. So if I need to move that, I don't need to reconfigure the rest of the document. Apply it to the object, not the text frame. You shouldn't be using the text frame to accommodate your content. And there are 2 reasons why it's better to have the wrap setting apply to the object to be wrapped. 1, it travels with the object when it's moved, as you've just seen. But even better than that, if we use the Pages panel and I select the object, copy it, move to another page, and then paste that object onto that other page, might not look like it's right, I need to move it behind the text, and you can see it has gone with it. So 2 benefits, travels with the object when it's moved, and it travels with the object when it's copied. Now, something else has happened here because we now have 2 huge images. Going back to page 2, you can see we have the conclusion, but we also have a warning here that we have a text overflow. That's one indication we have a text overflow. The other indication is at the very bottom of the screen, giving us 1 error and 3 warnings. So the quickest way to fix that is to make sure that we've clicked on the circle, hold the Shift key down, and click on the triangle that has appeared. What will happen is Affinity Publisher will automatically create as many additional pages as you need to accommodate the full text. That is called AutoFlow, and it's Shift and click the triangle. And yes, it's more than just images. Here's another copy of the document. We've seen so far that picture frames, be they rectangle or square or circle, can have text wrapping applied to them, like that. But it's not just those frames. So let's get rid of those. You can just place an image and have that wrapped. So I have an image here which perfectly shows this. So it's butterfly, but it's transparent. Now at the moment there's nothing wrapping around it, but if I were to apply a tight text wrap to that and increase the distance from the text, as I move it you can see the text is flowing around that image. Now this is because this image has transparency. It does not need to live in a picture frame. It actually has a customised text wrap outline on it. And how you see that is click the option to edit the text wrap outline, and you will see all these blue squares. And that is indicating all the edit points. I'm going to zoom in and keep zooming in, and you can see how many of them there are. And that's because it has transparency. And click away to deselect it. That's a great way to work when you want the text to flow around the transparency. But it's not just images. It's also any shape inside Affinity Publisher. So if I hold down the Option key and click the triangle, I can get the cat tool at the bottom. There really is a cat tool inside Affinity Publisher. So as I draw out the cat and put a tight wrap on it, and give the cat some colour, you can see the text flowing around the cat. What other shapes have we got? The donut works well with that. So drawing a donut on there, applying a tight wrap to that. Let's make it smaller. And because there is a hole in the middle of that shape, in effect what you're getting is the edge wrap style, even though you've only applied the tight wrap style to it. And let's do one more. So a star one on there and draw a star on. Again, apply a tight text wrap to that. And as you move that around, you can see the text is wrapping around it. Right, let's get rid of all of those and concentrate on something much more useful, which is tables. You can wrap a table. Now that table, pretty boring, but you can apply a wrap on it and it will push the text away from it, and the content of the table is then basically showcased. I have a much better example of that to show you how it works. So I'm going to delete that table, and again I have it in my assets panel, and this is a butterfly families table. So to show you what that looks like, it has a header row, it has a subheader, and then it has the actual information. I have applied a white background to the lower cells, so it stands out from the green background, but you can see it's over the text at the moment. But once I've placed that where I would like it and apply a tight wrap to it, and probably then increase this to 2-3 millimeters and zoom out, and let's look at the page. So you can wrap text around tables. You can also wrap text around other text frames. So let's bring in a pull quote that I have, which is a text frame. Nothing to see there at the moment because there is no text wrap on it. Applying a text wrap to it pushes the rest of the text away and lets you focus on the text of that quote. And again, I think that needs to have a little bit of distance from the text, possibly not that much. Maybe put that in the middle there or just to one side like that. Now, there is something to be aware of, and I have another document for this. Both of these pages look identical. It's part of a 4-page document, and this is the 2 pages in the middle, and they look identical. They have a background image of the Eiffel Tower, and I have carefully drawn around that, editing the text wrap outline. Based on what we know from the caterpillar, if I were to move into this image and move the Eiffel Tower, I would expect that to happen. I would expect the text to continue to flow around the Eiffel Tower, irrespective of where I actually move it to. That's what I would expect. If we were to do the same with the one on the right, that is not what happens, and yet they look identical. So what's going on? The left-hand Eiffel Tower has a wrap on the image itself, the image inside the picture frame. The right has a wrap on the picture frame, not on the image. Now the wrap applies directly to the object it's applied to. The image inside a picture frame is independent of that frame. So everything looks fine until you come to move the image inside the frame. Doing it on the left-hand side works perfectly, doing it on the right-hand side does not. That, again, is because the wrap was added to the frame and not the image inside the frame. So on the right-hand side here, the wrap was applied to the frame, whereas on the left, this is the frame, but that is the image, and the wrap was applied to the image. So if you try doing this and it doesn't behave as expected, do check that. That could well be your problem. Right, let's move on to a bonus. And I have another file for this. What I have in here are just some random picture frames and shapes. They don't have any wrap applied to them. So bringing up the text wrap window, you can see it automatically goes to none. I want the wrap to be tight and I want it to have a 3mm distance from text on there. And this one, again, I want a tight wrap on it, and again, I want 3mm. So I'm going through this process with these shapes in here. This one needs exactly the same again, so tight and 3mm. This one is tight and 3mm. Now, these are not even placeholders at the moment. They're just shapes. It doesn't actually matter because I can wrap it anyway. But again, I want this tight and I want it to be 3mm. Take this other shape, tight and 3mm. And I have one more here, which is a full column, and I want that to be tight with 3mm. You might be wondering what on earth I'm doing with this, but I'm doing this because you can't change the default, which is no wrap, no distance from the text, nothing. What I want to do is make it easier for myself to have consistency in future documents. And the best way to do that is to do what I've just done in here. And I would also, with these shapes, select them and give them a fill. The reason that I would do that is I'm using the dark interface. And if I were to just select one of these and then add it to my assets panel, I can barely see it. Whereas if it had a colour on it and I were to add that, it's more obvious what it is. So delete that first one, go and select all of the others, apply that colour to them, and then literally just go through, select the object, go to the burger menu of the assets, add from selection, and rinse and repeat until you have done them all. That means as you move through your document and you want consistency, instead of adding the shape and then going through the process of formatting each one individually, you have no need to. To use these, let's get a new page. All you need to do is drag and drop them into place. And when you check what's in the text wrap, you can see it's set to tight and 3mm, as is this one. Second bonus, pinning content. So the content that we added that is probably worth pinning is the table and the pull quote. Now, pinning means that you can pin an object to text frames, either as floating objects, which is what these are, or as inline objects inserted as a character. So let's start with the butterfly families. And let's say that we want that to be linked with the life cycle. Very simple to pin something. There is a pinning option on the toolbar, and this is float with text. So I'm going to click that. And what it does, it places this pin next to the nearest text. But you can move that if you want. So if I would like that up here, linked in with the word growth, I can do that. I can also move this around and the pin stays where it is. Now, what does this look like when it actually moves? Well, to do that, we'll cheat a bit. We'll go to page 1 and I will put in just a random shape which will force the text to move. So at the moment, that's doing absolutely nothing. But if I apply a tight wrap to it, you can see that on page 2, it's moved it over to the right-hand side, which is obviously not where we need it in relation to the pull quote. So I'm just going to get the pull quote out of the way. But what has happened to this is it's kept it as close as possible to the text it was next to before, while at the same time keeping the wrap. And that's exactly what the pull quote needs to do. Now, actually, I'm going to move this so it wraps back over here, because the pull quote actually needs to be with this life cycle area here. And if I go back to page 1 and just delete this, which will pull all of the text back up, you can see it pulls it back onto page 1 as well. But I am interested in my pull quote here. So I'm going to put my pull quote where I want it, which is there, but it actually needs to be linked into the life cycle and metamorphosis here. And how I'm going to do that is just hit the pin option, grab the blue handle, which is the pin, and put that where it needs to be linked to. And again, if we go into here and force that text to move down onto the next page, it moves with it. I might choose to manually position it, but you can see it at least gives me a head start of where it needs to be. It's better than the text moving 3 or 4 pages and then manually having to marry up the pull quotes with the original text. Let's have a quick recap. Wrapping applies to the object around which the text is to be wrapped. You can wrap more than picture frames. You can wrap placed images, shapes, other text, and tables. You have 6 options for wrapping: none, jump, square, tight, inside, and edge. You also have 2 options when it comes to wrap to, and that is you can wrap the text around both sides of the object, or you can choose to wrap the text only on the largest side. And remember, that is within a column of text and not across multiple columns. Then you can specify the distance from the text. You have individual options for left, right, top and bottom, or you can choose to link all 4 of those together. You can edit the text wrap outline to suit your content, and the edited text wrap outline can be reset. Content with wrapping applied can be pinned. And in the absence of a default setting, use the Assets panel to create a range of content that already has wrapping applied. If you want new tutorials and tips and tricks on a regular basis, check out my free training at elainegiles.com/VIP. Hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss future tutorials. And if you have any requests for specific tutorials, be sure to contact me. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you next time.